They say your life can change in a single moment. For me, it was a dusty letter in a box marked Christmas Lights, 2001. Before we dive in, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss a story that twists, turns, and hits where it hurts. Let's get into it. It was a rainy Saturday in Maplewood, the kind that makes you dig through old memories just to feel warm. I was searching for childhood photos for my senior year project, something simple, something sweet. My parents, Diane and Greg Carlson, had asked me not to mess around too much in the attic, but they weren't home. And I wasn't exactly tearing the place apart, just moving a few boxes. That's when I found it. Behind an old Rubbermaid bin, wedged between insulation and the wooden beam, was a yellowing envelope. No stamp. No return address. Just my name, Eliza, scrawled in faded ink. I almost didn't open it. Something about the paper felt personal in a way that made my chest tighten. But curiosity wins every time, doesn't it? Inside was a single sheet of lined paper, aged and creased from being folded so long. It said, "They aren't your parents. They never were. Ask about Roseville. Ask about 2007. No signature. No explanation. Just that. I sat there, cross-legged on the attic floor, rereading the letter so many times the words started to blur. They aren't your parents? What kind of sick joke was this? I knew my mom and dad. Diane had been there for every scraped knee, every science fair disaster. Greg taught me to ride a bike in the cul-de-sac. I had pictures, birthday cards, homemade ornaments. They weren't perfect, but they were mine, weren't they? But something about Roseville stirred a strange itch in my mind. A place I couldn't quite place. And 2007. That was the year I turned 5. The year we moved to Maplewood, or so I'd always been told. Still, I tried to shake it off. I stuffed the letter into my back pocket, grabbed the box of photos, and went downstairs pretending nothing was different, but everything was. I looked around the house, at the family portraits, the framed diplomas, the little plaques with phrases like "family is forever." And I felt detached. Like I was suddenly standing inside a movie set. I thought about showing the letter to Mom and Dad right then. But something stopped me. A voice in my head whispering, if they've been lying, will they really tell the truth now? So I did what any kid does when they start to doubt the ground beneath their feet. I started digging. That letter wasn't just a warning. It was the first crack in the mirror, and soon, I was going to see exactly what was hiding behind the reflection of my so-called life. Some questions are harmless, like what's for dinner? Or do we have any batteries? But some questions carry weight, the kind that makes a room fall silent even before they're answered. Hey Mom, I said that evening, trying to sound casual as I leaned against the kitchen doorway. Did we ever live in Roseville? Diane was stirring spaghetti sauce, humming something soft and familiar, until I said the name. Her wooden spoon paused mid-air, just for a second, but enough to make my chest tighten. She recovered quickly. Roseville? No, I don't think so. Why would you ask that? I shrugged. I don't know. I found an old box in the attic labeled Roseville. Got me wondering. A lie, yes, but better than waving around a strange letter accusing my parents of being actors. She gave me that tight smile I hated, the one she used on teachers and neighbors when she was politely dismissing them. We've always been in Maplewood, honey. Maybe you're thinking of someone else. I didn't push it then. But later, I tried Dad. We were watching the Twins game. Greg Carlson was the type of guy who only missed first pitches for emergencies or church. Dad, do you remember where we lived in 2007? He sipped his beer. Here, I think? No, before here. Like, early 2007. Mom said maybe Roseville? His eyes flicked toward me, just a flick, but the pitch on the screen seemed to stop mattering. Why were you asking all this all of a sudden? School project, I lied again. I need early memories. Where we lived, stuff like that. He shifted in his chair. You were 5. Not much to remember. We were in Maplewood by then. Maybe briefly elsewhere. But nothing important. I nodded like that made sense. But it didn't, not even a little. Later that night, I stood in the hallway outside their room, listening. Diane whispered, she asked about Roseville. Someone must have told her something. Greg mumbled something back, too low to catch. I backed away before I heard more. My heartbeat was thudding in my ears. There it was, proof. They were hiding something. Together, the next day, I searched Eliza Carlson birth records online, nothing. Then I tried Eliza Marsh. That's when things started to get strange. A local Roseville article from 2007 popped up. Child Services places toddler amid family dispute, father institutionalized. No names listed publicly. But the timing matched. The city matched, and in my gut, I knew. Something big happened that year, something they didn't want me to remember. And the more I looked at them now, smiling, cooking dinner, watching TV, the more I saw two people pretending everything was fine, but their eyes were afraid, and mine were finally open. By Monday, the house didn't feel like a home anymore. Every hallway creaked louder. Every framed photo seemed staged. And the worst part? Diane and Greg still smiled at me like nothing had changed, like I wasn't slowly unraveling the truth with every passing hour. But I wasn't just suspicious anymore. I was certain. I remembered the tall cherrywood cabinet in Dad's office. It had always been locked, and I'd been told it held financial papers and old tax returns. For 17 years, I hadn't questioned that, but now? I couldn't ignore it, and I knew exactly where the spare key was hidden. When I was 13, I watched Greg slide the key into a fake National Geographic book on the bookshelf. He didn't think I noticed, but I never forgot. At the time, I thought it was cool. Like a spy movie. Now, it just felt sinister. My hands shook as I pulled the book down and slipped out the key. I stood there for a full minute, staring at the locked cabinet like it might explode. Then I slid the key in. Click, the top drawer held a few old receipts and handwritten notes. Nothing unusual. But the second drawer? That was the one that hit like a punch to the ribs. Inside were folders stamped with strange titles: guardianship placement, subject E. Marsh, confidential agreement, Diane Gregory Fields, behavioral monitoring reports, monthly summaries. My mouth went dry. Gregory Fields. Not Carlson, and Diane had signed using her maiden name. All the documents dated back to 2007, the year we moved to Maplewood. Or rather, the year they were assigned to me. My fingers trembled as I flipped through the paperwork. Legal jargon, payment schedules, updates on my emotional behavior. One note even read, subject displays signs of attachment. Recommend minimal interference. Subject, not child. Not daughter. Not Eliza. Subject, my knees buckled, and I sank to the floor. Everything made a sick sort of sense now. Their constant involvement in my school. Their overpoliteness with neighbors. How they'd never shown baby photos of me before age 5. How I'd always felt like I didn't quite belong in my own family. I wasn't adopted, I was assigned, and the people I'd called mom and dad for almost my entire life weren't parents, they were actors. Paid, contracted actors with performance reviews and instructions. I sat there in the dark, surrounded by the truth, paper thin and razor sharp, and for the first time, I didn't cry. I didn't panic, I planned, because if this was a performance, it was time to flip the script. It's strange, finding your name in a file and realizing it doesn't belong to you anymore. I wasn't Eliza Carlson. Not really. The documents I found in that locked cabinet made that painfully clear. I was Eliza Marsh. A name I had never heard spoken, but one that pulsed through every line of those reports like a ghost demanding to be known. The file labeled Subject E. Marsh had the most information. Birth certificate. Hospital records. Case notes. Everything stamped and signed like I was part of some secret experiment, because in a way, I was. A stapled document titled Behavioral Transition Program Number 213 laid it out in black and white. It wasn't adoption. It wasn't foster care, it was a private guardianship program, funded through an anonymous donor and managed by a now-defunct legal trust in Minneapolis. The files detailed my removal from a home deemed emotionally unstable, followed by the placement with a carefully selected guardian pair, Diane and Gregory Fields, chosen for their low public profile, psychological compatibility, and controlled environment. Not one word about love. Not one word about choice, and under reasons for the placement, someone had written, subject's father deemed unfit due to erratic behavior and prior legal conflict with extended family. No maternal claimants. Long-term memory suppression recommended. Memory suppression, was that why I couldn't remember anything from before I turned 5? I sat in my room with the file open, surrounded by pieces of my life I'd never seen before. A copy of my original birth certificate, not Carlson. Marsh. Born in Roseville, Minnesota. Hospital, St. Catharines. Mother, unknown. Father, Michael Marsh. I stared at that name for a long time. Michael Marsh, why hadn't I ever heard it before? Why hadn't they ever told me? A surge of emotion rose in my chest, grief, confusion, anger. But beneath it all was a quiet, focused rage. Because now I knew the truth, my life wasn't a series of memories, it was a carefully constructed illusion, and the people who built it didn't just lie, they profited from it. I spent the next few days researching everything I could about the Marsh name. I scoured public records, court filings, hospital documents. At first, there wasn't much, just a few old property listings, a tax lien, an expired driver's license, but then I found a court case from 2007. Michael Marsh versus Karen Fielding, Diane's sister. My hands went cold. The case was sealed, but the summary was public. It said Michael Marsh had sued Karen for unlawful custody interference after claiming she had orchestrated the removal of his daughter under false pretenses. The judge dismissed the case after Marsh was placed into psychiatric care for a mental health evaluation. He was erased. Quietly. Legally, and Karen, Diane's sister, had footed the bill for it all. I wasn't just stolen, I was taken, placed, rebranded, and raised in a life built on money, lies, and betrayal. But now, I had a name, my real name, and I was going to find out who took it from me, and why. They erased him like he never mattered, but paper doesn't lie, and Michael Marsh's name kept surfacing like a body that refused to stay buried. It took 2 weeks to find the right records. The court case gave me just enough, a name, a city, a thread to pull. I followed it to a long-closed psychiatric center outside Stillwater, Minnesota, and eventually, to a care facility tucked behind a faded gas station and a dying pine forest. The receptionist squinted when I gave the name, Michael Marsh? He's been here since 2009, I think. That meant he'd been locked away 2 years after I was placed with Diane and Greg. Long enough to lose his credibility, short enough to remember everything they tried to make me forget. They brought me to a rec room where a few residents sat watching daytime TV. One man sat alone by the window, thin and pale, his gray beard patchy and uneven. He didn't look like the father I imagined, but somehow, I knew it was him. Michael? I asked, gently. He turned his head slowly, eyes landing on me with a quiet intensity, and then he whispered, Eliza? My heart nearly stopped. He hadn't seen me since I was 5. No pictures. No videos. But somehow, he knew. I didn't know whether to run or cry. He stood, unsteady but upright, and walked toward me like I was a memory come alive. I knew you'd find me one day. I always said you would. We sat at a nearby table. My hand shook as I laid the court summary in front of him. You said they took me. He nodded, eyes glistening. Karen, your mom's sister. She never liked me. Said I wasn't stable enough. After your mother died, I was alone. Vulnerable. I thought I could raise you myself, but I made mistakes. I missed court dates. I drank too much. I got angry. He took a breath, but I never hurt you. I never would. They used that against me. They twisted everything. I didn't want to believe it, but I did, because the people I thought were protecting me had lied about everything else. Why not this? I tried to fight, he said. Went to court. Told the truth. But Karen had money. Lawyers. Friends in the system. And then they stuck me in here for evaluation. That was all it took. He laughed bitterly. They called it guardianship. Said it was for your safety. But it wasn't about you. It was about control. I left that day with more questions than answers, but also with something I hadn't had since the attic: proof that I wasn't crazy. That someone remembered me. Loved me. Fought for me. Michael Marsh may have been buried alive by a system designed to forget him, but he was still here. And now that I knew the truth, I wasn't going to forget. Not him, not what they did, not any of it. Some ghosts don't haunt you, they control you, long after they're gone. My Aunt Karen Fielding was that kind of ghost. Her name didn't show up in the guardianship contracts, not directly. But her money did. Her signature was on the trust that funded my placement. Her name sat on the deed of a law office that processed the sealed paperwork. Every trail I followed seemed to curve back to her, like she was the architect of it all. I remembered her from childhood in flashes: tight curls, cold perfume, a voice like ice cubes clinking in a glass. She used to give me dolls I didn't ask for and stare a little too long when she thought I wasn't looking. When she died of a stroke 8 years ago, Diane cried like she'd lost her best friend. Greg didn't. Now I was starting to understand why. I went through old boxes in the basement, ones Diane hadn't touched in years. Tucked between photo albums and tax folders was a file marked KF Holdings. Inside were dozens of receipts, legal invoices, and wire transfers, and at the top, stapled to a letterhead bearing Fielding Family Trust, was a single payment: $120,000 to Carlson Associates, Long-Term Guardianship Arrangement/Behavioral Stability Program number 213, the same program from my file. Karen hadn't just suggested my removal, she'd bought it. According to Michael, Karen claimed my mother was unfit near the end, unwell, erratic. I'll never know the full truth about my mom, she died before I could ask. But Karen had moved fast. Petitioned for custody. When Michael fought back, she buried him in sealed hearings and character evaluations. She didn't want to raise me herself, she wanted me removed, repackaged, and placed with people she could control. And Diane, she was her sister, her accomplice. I found emails next. Old, printed ones between Diane and Karen. Some were about me, updates, questions, even progress reports, like I was a project. One line gutted me completely: she's starting to forget. Soon, she'll believe Maplewood was always home. They knew, they were counting on it. Karen's obituary called her a woman of grace, philanthropy, and quiet strength. The local papers praised her community work and charity donations. No one ever mentioned the child she took, the father she silenced, or the life she rewrote like a novelist killing off characters. But I knew now, she paid to erase my name, she paid to script my childhood, she paid for silence. And yet, here I was, not silent, not gone, remembering everything. Her money bought her a lie, but her death gave me something more valuable than revenge: room to expose her. Because if Karen Fielding thought the truth would die with her, she made the same mistake everyone else did. She underestimated me. I didn't storm into the living room, I didn't yell or throw accusations. No, I came down the stairs holding the truth in a manila folder. Greg was fixing the fireplace like nothing was wrong. Diane sat on the couch scrolling through her phone. It felt obscene, how normal they looked while my entire life had been disassembled upstairs. I found everything, I said. Diane's head lifted slowly. Greg stopped mid-motion, fire poker frozen in his hand. I know about the guardianship program. The contracts. Karen. All of it. The silence that followed was deafening. But it wasn't surprise I saw in their eyes. It was resignation. Like they'd been bracing for this moment for years. Greg stood first. Eliza, it's not what you think. My laugh came sharp and bitter. It's exactly what I think. You were paid to raise me. You let me call you Dad. Diane swallowed hard. We were supposed to watch you for a year. That was the original deal. Just a year while things with your family settled. Settled? I echoed. You mean while Karen paid off judges and threw my real father into a psychiatric facility? Greg sat down slowly. We didn't know how far she'd go. Not at first. But by the time we understood, you were already calling us mom and dad. You didn't remember Michael. You were happy. Happy, a word so small and insulting I could barely breathe around it. Diane stood now too. Her voice cracked. We did love you. We still do. It stopped being about money a long time ago. We stayed because we couldn't imagine life without you. I looked at her, the woman who braided my hair before picture day, who cried when I got accepted to college, and I wanted to believe her, but love without truth is just performance. You had years, I said quietly. You could have told me the truth. Given me the choice. Let me meet him. Greg shook his head. We were scared. We thought he'd undo everything. You mean undo your life? They didn't argue. They didn't try to defend themselves anymore, because they knew. Later, Diane knocked softly on my bedroom door. She handed me a photo, me. At 5 years old, clinging to a man with a tired face and kind eyes. Michael, I kept this, she whispered. I always meant to give it to you. I just never did. I didn't take the photo. I didn't slam the door either. I just looked at her, really looked, and felt something die inside me, not anger. Not grief, just the quiet, shattering end of trust. They chose loyalty, to Karen, to comfort, to fear. But they never chose me, not really, and now, it was my turn to choose. I didn't want revenge, not at first, but the more I thought about how long they let me live inside a lie, how many years they smiled while feeding me half-truths, the more it felt like justice couldn't come quietly, so I started building a file. Not just for me. For everyone, every document from the cabinet, every behavioral report signed by Diane, every court transcript with Karen's name buried in legal jargon, every payment receipt, and the photo, me and Michael, tucked in the back like a final punctuation mark. I scanned it all. Labeled each file. Created a Dropbox folder titled Subject E. Marsh, A Fabricated Childhood. Then I reached out to someone I trusted. Mallory, an editor at the Twin Cities Sentinel. We'd gone to high school together. She was always the one chasing real stories, not just fluff about bake sales and city ordinances. I sent her everything with one line: you said you wanted something big. This is bigger than you think. She called me an hour later, her voice shaking. Eliza. Are you okay? No, I said. But I'm ready. We planned it like a story drop. Monday morning. Headline: time to post at 7 a.m. Mallory ran the piece anonymously, as I requested, but every fact was sourced, every image cross-checked. She knew how to make it airtight. By noon, Maplewood wasn't quiet anymore. Neighbors were texting. Teachers from my old school were calling Diane. The PTA president resigned. Someone spray-painted fake family across the Carlsons' garage door. The mayor released a cautious statement about historic legal concerns and community ethics. They thought they knew the Carlsons. Turns out, they only knew the roles they played. Greg stayed inside. Diane wore sunglasses to the grocery store. Neither of them answered their phones. I heard someone spotted them driving out toward the lake house, trying to avoid reporters. But I didn't hide. For the first time in my life, I wasn't playing a part. I was Eliza Marsh, not a subject. Not a placement, just me. The story spread beyond Minnesota. The program, Behavioral Transition Number 213, was being investigated now. A few other cases were coming to light, children placed under similar shady circumstances. My file had become a blueprint for exposing them. I wasn't invisible anymore, and neither were the people who tried to erase me. Some folks said I was cruel, airing out family secrets like dirty laundry, but it was never about punishment. It was about truth, about giving voice to a girl who had none for 17 years. Diane emailed me once after the article. No subject line. Just one sentence: I still love you. I didn't reply. Some performances don't deserve an encore. The last time I stood outside the Carlson house, the leaves were just beginning to turn red and gold. Beautiful, like the world was trying to make up for how much it had taken. I didn't say goodbye. I left a note on the kitchen counter. nothing dramatic. Just the truth, written simply and clearly: I forgive you. But I'm choosing me now. Eliza Marsh. I walked out the front door and didn't look back. I moved to Duluth, near the water, into a small apartment above a used bookstore that always smelled like ink and old paper. The landlord was a retired teacher named Nora who barely asked questions. And for once, that suited me just fine. At the courthouse, I filed for the legal name change, Eliza Grace Marsh. The woman behind the desk smiled when she handed me the stamped form. "Congratulations," she said. "That's a strong name." It felt like being born again, only this time, no one else was writing the script. Starting over was quiet. And awkward. And sometimes lonely. There were nights I missed Diane's lasagna or the way Greg used to hum when he shaved in the morning. But I had to remind myself, I wasn't mourning parents. I was mourning the idea of them. They raised me. Yes. But they also lied to me, for years, and love, without truth, is just control wrapped in a softer voice. I visited Michael again. This time, I brought him a framed copy of our photo. He cried when I handed it to him. "I thought I'd lost you," he said. "You didn't," I told him. "You were just delayed. We've been building something slow and fragile, like a bridge over cold water. But it's real. And I'll take real over perfect any day." I still have the letter. The one from the attic. "They aren't your parents. Ask about Roseville." I keep it taped inside my journal, a reminder of the moment my life cracked open, and finally started to matter. Now, when I walk down the street, I don't flinch when someone says my name, because it's mine, not borrowed. Not given, mine, Eliza Marsh. I don't know where this path leads yet. College maybe. Or writing. Or advocacy work, God knows the system needs it. But whatever I do, it'll be by my own design. No more performances. No more scripts. No more wondering who I am who I say I am, and that's enough. That's finally, completely enough. Thank you for listening to Eliza Marsh's story. If this journey moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more gripping true story style narrations. Have you ever uncovered a family secret that changed everything? Let's talk about it in the comments section. Your voice matters here.